Hi, welcome to another episode of the Meat Stack. Over the past few weeks, we have been building up the back end, and we have actually completed our Nest backend application. In the last episode, I showed you, the different configurations, different ways where you can include the Angular application into Nest, and also we've created, sorry, not the last episode, but the episode before that, how I showed you how we can use, how we can, create a situation where we can either deploy Angular as a standalone or as what I call an embedded mode, where you compile the Angular application and get the Nest backend to serve the Angular application as part of the application. And in the last episode, we created uh, a health API, that allows modern cloud infrastructures like Docker or Kubernetes to query the health of the application. We've created this is our resource to create to check for the health. And if you recall, what we do is this in response to a request for the health, the Nest application did a simple query to the database just to check, if the database is up. If the database is down, then we will say that the entire Nest application is down. In this episode, what we will be doing is this. Since we have finished the application, what we'll be doing is this. We are going to create a container. We're going to containerize our application. What we will do is we will containerize our we will create a container of the MySQL database, and we will seed this database with some initial data. We'll create a schema, and then we will seed the database. The second container that we will be creating is the application of the entire backend, where we will build Nest, and then we will compile our Angular application, and we will make an Angular application as part of the Nest application. So that is the second container, and we'll be calling this version 2 since we have version 1. So if you've forgotten about version 1, or if you don't know about version 1, go back and look at the last few episodes of season 1. Let's start this episode. As usual, we'll be creating a branch. I'll call this part 29. Oops. Check out. Right. So just to have a look. Okay, we're part 29. So I will first of all start by building, containerizing uh, the database. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to contain a database with this schema. We're going to have the schema SQL, and then we're going to have the data. Just very quickly, if you just as a refresher, we will have a look at this is our data. This is our database schema, okay, and then we will seed it with some initial data. The the database that we'll be using is MySQL. So I'm into Docker Hub. I've logged into Docker Hub. Oops, MySQL. And so this is the MySQL image that we will be using. So let's start. I'm going to use MySQL 8. So let's start. What I'll do is this. Inside the database directory, I will create a file called Docker file. And then I'm going to get it from the MySQL image. I'm going to use the version 8. And I will create so to use this image, we need to set a few things. The few things we need to set is the environment variable. We need to set the root password. Okay, I don't need to set the MySQL. So the only thing that we'll be setting is the root password. So we can say environment. The root password is MySQL root password. I will call it. So this is root, right? So change it. Okay. I can create other users if I want to. Okay. In this case, I'm just going to leave this alone. I will be using the root. The second thing I want to do is this. I want to seed this database And to do that, what we need to do is this. We will need to, let me see here. Let me go and, okay. So what we need to do is this. We need to copy inside the image. There is a directory called slash docker entry point dash initdb. What we need to do is that we need to copy our two SQL files into this directory. So when the image starts up, the image will actually go to this directory and look at if there are any files in there. If there are files, you use that. You use those files to create the image. Okay. So what I'll do is this. I will now go to change that directory. So the directory is called docker entry point initdb.directory. So I've changed it into that directory. And now what I want to do is I'm going to copy the two files over. I don't need test. So these are the two files. Oops. What did I do? What did I do? Okay, let's. What did I do? Okay. Okay, the order of the files is very important because we need to create a schema first, followed by the data. I'm going to put a number in front of it. So I'm going to copy that. Okay. So what I'm doing is this. I'm changing into this directory, and then I'm copying from my local machine the schema file, and I'm calling it 01 schema. And then the second file is 02 data. The reason is the order is very important because we need to create the schema first before loading the data. So after that, what we need to do is this. I'll just create another environment variable here. I don't need to, but I would. This is generally what I do. I'll call it as MySQL port 3306, and then we need to expose the port. Okay, so that's our entire uh, image, right? That we set the root password to be changed, and then we changed it into the entry point directory. We copy the two files from our local machine into the image, and then after that, we just say that since this is a MySQL image, I don't need to have this line, but I like to put it in just as a reminder for myself. This image is exposing a port, the standard MySQL port called 3306. So now what we're going to do is this, we're going to build this image. Hopefully there's no error. So Docker build, and I'm going to put tag it. And we're going to push it to Docker Hub. So I need to put the name of my account. I will call this image according to my little diagram here. I'm going to call it NEATDB, and this is version 1. Okay, and the file is the context is this, right? So that's very fast. So that's my file here. So let's test this. Let's test this uh, uh, image. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to create a network, and then I'm going to deploy the image into this network. And what I'm also going to do is this. I will show you how to provision a little volume and attach a volume into the image. The reason why I want to do that is because, as you probably know, images are ephemeral. Uh, so if you have some data in the image, and if the image shuts down without any external volume, that you lose the database, right? So what we want to do is this: we want to uh, create a volume outside and attach it, and ask the image to use this volume as uh, as as a place to create the database. And then if we do shut down the image, if we do kill the container, we will still retain the, the the data. This is in preparation for when we deploy to Kubernetes. Okay, so this is what we do. The first thing we do is that we'll create a network, and we can use the network we can use the Docker network command. We can do ls. So those are the default network. I will create. I'll call this my net. Okay, so we can have a look at the network. And then the next thing we'll do is that we'll look at the volume. So those are the volumes. And then I'll just create a volume called my vol. Then I'll list my volume again, right? So this is what we'll do. We'll run the image. We'll create a container for the image. We'll say docker run -d. That's running it in detach or daemon, if you like. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to put it into the, run this inside the mynet network. Okay. And then the volume I'm going to use is my vol. And my vol is mount to the image inside a specific directory where where the image creates the where the image writes the MySQL database, and that location is actually here var lib MySQL. So this is the directory. So this is what we say. So we say -v the volume slash var lib MySQL. That's the volume, and then I'm going to give my my container a name. The reason why I need to give my container a name is later on when we deploy the Nest application, we need to tell the Nest application where the host name of the database, right? So also it's no longer localhost, the host name, and this is the host name that I'm going to use. So I will call this just to simplify things a little bit. I'll call this NEATApp, okay, and oh, one other thing, sorry, one other thing I forgot to do. I forgot to put in I forgot to add a health check for, for my image. So the health check goes like this. Okay, so this is the health check. And what we want to do is we want to get Docker to ping, to execute this command every 30 seconds. And the timeout is, I'm going to put it at 5 seconds. We'll wait for 5 seconds before before we start the health check. And if after 3 retries, if we still fail, then Docker will Docker will deem the container unhealthy. Okay, so this is what we'll do. We will run a command called MySQL admin, and then the command is ping. The user I'm going to use is root, and the password will be the MySQL root password here. Okay, and if it fails, I want to exit this. So this command, if it's successful, will return 0, and and a, and, and a different exit and a different exit code. If it's not successful. So if it's successful, this thing will return 0, which is okay. The health check will say this okay. Otherwise, this part of the command will be executed. So it will return 1, which is which tells Docker that the uh, the container is not healthy. So let me build this again. Right. Okay. So that was again quite fast. So let's have a look at the image. Okay. Oh, sorry. Images. Right. And then we can look at the history of our image. Sorry. DB. Right. So you see the health check. Okay. So let's go back and run our command again. So let's have a look at this. So I've got Docker network, okay, and then I'll go volume, right? So we will run this now. We will say Docker run -d. We'll put it inside the network. You run it inside the network, my net, and then we're going to use the volume, my vol, and then it's going to be mounted to this location. I'll give my container a name. Okay, and the image I'm going to run this is this guy. I'm not exposing any port because MySQL will not be used externally. Okay, I will explain this a little bit more. So this is what I'm going to run. Right. So let's have a look at this. I'm running this. I'm watching this. I'm doing a watch of Docker ps -a in another in our terminal simply because this terminal I'm making the font smaller so that we can see everything in one line. So we notice that the Docker image, the MySQL, excuse me, the MySQL container is starting up. So notice that that's 28 seconds. So the moment you hit 30 seconds, it did the first ping running that command. So now it's healthy. We can actually go into this, go into my container, go into the container to have a look. So the name of the container is NetDB. We can go docker exec create allocate a terminal netdb, and then we will run the bash command inside. So now we are inside the container. So those are the two files that I have copied in. We can run the MySQL client. So MySQL -u root. So the password, remember, is change it. Okay, so now we're inside MySQL. We'll go show databases. So notice that neat stack is here. Okay, tables. That's all our tables, right? You can so select all from kboard, and those are the three boards, that is seeded from our data SQL table. Okay, so now we have got a container up and running. Okay, so we'll keep that aside first. So we have accomplished our first task, creating this. Now what we will do is we'll create the second part of the second container, which is the application, and the application will connect to this guy. So to do that, what I'll do is this. To go through the Docker build process, this is slightly more complicated. What I will do is this: I will build the entire application by hand first, manually first, and then we'll translate the steps into creating the image. To do that, what I will do is this: I will create a temporary directory. Okay, let me create the git ignore so that I don't accidentally check in this temporary directory. Sorry, oops, it's git ignore. Git. Okay, so temp. Right, so inside this temp directory, this is what I'm going to do. The first thing I need to do is I need to build Angular. So we will go back to the front end, and then we'll build Angular for production. So this is the first thing we'll do. We'll build the Angular for production. So I'll pause the video and I will return after the Angular has finished building. Okay, so Angular has finished building. This is the directory. This is the binary, quote unquote, that it has built. Right. So this is the directory. Okay. So the next thing that we will build is the back end. So this is the Nest application. To build the Nest application, we just go Nest build without the -- prod. Again, I'll pause the video. Okay, so that's done. I don't need to pause the video. Right, so it has built this guy, and the directory is distribution, dist. And this is the entire binary for the for Nest. Again, quote unquote binary. So we are now going to assemble the application inside the temp directory. The first thing we'll do is that we'll copy the Angular application over front end to this directory, and we'll copy the front end over. So this is the file. Then the second thing we'll do is this: we will now copy the back end, the Nest application over. Then this directory, we want to copy everything inside here. Yeah. So this is our front end. That's the back end. All this, the back end comment and this dsconfig build info comes from the back end. We also need two things from the back end, which is the package.json. the reason why we need the package.json is this is what we're going to do. Once we have copied this, we need to install all the packages that's required by Nest. So this is what we will run. We run npm I for production. We don't want to install any packages that is part of the part of development process. So once we have installed the Node modules, we can now run our Nest application like this. So sorry, we can now run our Nest application using the Node command. Node. The Nest main is in backend, source main, and then we will just say client path, and then the path to the client where where we are serving Angular is front the full path to this location. So we need the full path to front end. Okay. So I've actually talked about this in episode, in the in one of the episodes, I think two episodes ago, right, where we are building this up. So this is how we run. I won't run this because uh, I don't have MySQL running locally. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to build the Docker image according to the steps that I've just listed out. I'll, so we will now create a Docker file to build uh, to build our application. What I'll do is this: I'll create a directory called deploy. This deploy is actually from season 1. So let me rename this to deploy maybe S01. Then we'll create a new directory, deploy SO2. SO2. We will now create a Docker file. Okay. So it'll be from Node. We are using Node version 15. Okay, so we pull the Node 15 module, Node 15 image, and then from here I'm going to create an environment variable called app.dir, which is basically a directory that I'll be working with. It's like it's like our temp directory. So sorry, I'm not going to call it temp. I'm going to call it app, right? And then I will create a directory called arc, which will. So I'll explain this a little bit afterwards. After I've written this. So what I'm going to do is this, right? We need the source to the application, and I'll be running. I'll be pulling the source from the GitHub from from the GitHub report, from the NEATApp GitHub repository, and the branch that we're going to pull is the latest branch, which is branch 28. Okay, remember ours is branch 29, right? Okay, so we'll be pulling branch 28, the last complete branch, and this is what we're going to do. Okay, we will go work directory. I'm going to change into the app directory first. What Docker will do is this: if the directory doesn't exist, Docker will create a directory, and then it'll change into that directory. So inside here, what I'll do is this: I'll run the command git clone, and then I'm going to clone the branch. I'm going to clone the single branch, and I will be cloning this. Okay, so this will now create a directory inside. Will create a directory called NEATApp inside the /app directory. Okay, so after that, I need to do two more things. I need to run, and I need to install the Nest CLI and the Angular CLI. So Angular CLI, and then the Nest CLI. So those two commands. Okay. So maybe I will do this. Let me do this. Make this more clearer. I'll move these two things up here. Okay. So from Node, after we have we have gotten the node image, we will install our two command, our two CLI, Angular and Nest, and then we change directory into app, we clone. Now we're going to build Angular. Okay, so to build Angular, we're going to change into the front end directory inside NEATApp. So we'll do a work directory again, and then we go to front end, just like we did just now. Now we need to reinstall everything. So we say run, reinstall the packages inside Angular, and then only after we have installed the packages, then can we do ng build for production. So that's the first step. The second step we will do is this. We will now say we're going to build the Nest application. We will change directory to backend. Then we do the same thing again. We will install all the packages, and then we will now go Nest build. So we have built two. We built Angular. First of all, we clone our directory, we clone our repository, and then we change directory into the front end. We install, we build. Again, the same thing. We go into the Nest directory, the backend. We install and we build. Okay, so now that is done. We now need to assemble our application. The final binaries. Okay, B-I-N-A-R-I, binaries. Okay, so to do that, we need to copy from we need and so to assemble a binary, we will create our final container. Okay, we'll create our final image, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy the artifacts that we created from here over to here. Remember, we do not want the source code. We only want the binaries, so the output of these two, right? So to copy from one container into another container, we will give the first container a name. I'm going to call this builder. Okay, so we'll reference. So the first container is called builder. We will reference. Uh, we will reference all the artifacts using the builder name. Okay, so we will now assemble the binary. The first thing we'll do is this. We'll just say from again. Node. Use the version 15, and then we have the environment variable. Same thing. I'm going to say this is my app there, and then the directory is app, and we need some environment variables from Nest. So if you recall, we've got this bunch of environment variables, right? So we need to include this inside the image for some default settings when a Nest application starts up. So what I'll do is this: I'll read. I'm not going to take all of them. I'll just put some of it here. So this is the port 8080 is the application port, so we will need that. Okay. So the DB host, okay, we'll leave the DB host out. We'll leave the DB port out. The DB name, the database name, the default is NEATApp. We can leave it out. So the database username, we need to set this. The database username is now no longer binary. It's root, and the password the, for the image, for the database image that we've built, is change it. Okay, and then I'll just use the time zone and the connection limit. Okay, so those are my environment variables. Now, what I'll do is this: we will change directory into the app directory. Okay. Now we will copy the artifact from the builder container over into the app directory. We will go copy from the builder directory. So this builder, this name is this name here. Okay. So where will we copy from? We'll first of all copy the front end directory. We'll say app directory. Oops. Okay. App directory, front end. That's the source. Remember, if you have built it, there will be a directory called distribution, dist, and then we want to copy the front end, okay, into this image. So from from the builder image into this image, and then the directory name will be called front end. Okay, so we are doing the first line where we are copying the front end into here. Now we'll do the second one where we'll copy from the back end. And the back end we want to copy everything. So we do that. So we want to copy all the files under this directory into the current directory. And then remember we also need to copy the package. And then we want to copy the log file as well. So those are the three files. Those are the four files. After we have done that, we will now install the node packages. At this point, our image, our final image is complete. So we now need to say how the image is run. So this is the building part. So now we want to say how the image is run. So first thing I want to do is I want to say that we are exposing a pod called pod. Okay. I also want to do a health check. Again, it's going to be the health check is pretty much similar to what we did for the container for the database. You say 5 seconds, start period, everything's the same. The command that we're going to use is we're going to use curl. Okay, ignore any errors. We're going to ping localhost. So this is going to call the curl is going to call this resource. Okay. So the pod is pod, and then it's going to say API helps. And if it is not successful, again, let's go exit one. Finally, we'll tell it how to start the application by using the entry point command. So we'll say node, and then we will say the main file is inside backend src main, and then we want to give it the command line, right? If you recall, we will say the command line is climb path, and finally the climb path is front end. The entry point is, think of it like an exec command line, right? How we execute the image. So let's run through this. This is not a really complicated image. It's just a lot of steps. We have two images. The first image is called a builder, and what we'll do is that in this image, the first image is just purely for building, Angular and Nest. So we install the Angular CLI and the Nest CLI, and then we clone the repository into the image. Of course, we create temporary directory in here. It's called app, and we clone it into the temporary directory, into the /app directory, and then we change CD into the front end, which is the Angular application. We reinstall all the packages, and then we build the Angular application, and then we check CD into the back end, the Nest application. Again, we do the same thing. We install the packages, we build Nest. So that is complete. Then what we do is that we are now going to assemble our final image by using the node image again. We set some environment variables, and then we'll say the work directory /app is our work directory. We copy from the first image the Angular distribution, the binary, under this front end into the current directory, into my current work directory, and then I'll copy the backend, this, and then the two packages, install, npmi installs this, and then finally we will say, this application is exposing a pod. In our case, the default pod is pod 8080, which is defined in line 29. This is the health check, and then this is how we run the application. Okay, so let's build this. Application. Let's build this image. So we will say docker build. Let me just go docker images first. Okay. So this is the name of the image that we're going to build. It's called NEATApp version 2 because we already got version 1. this is version 1, which is done, uh, which we built in season 1. Okay, so this is what we did in season 1. So I'm going to call this neat stack. Okay, version 2, Docker build version 2, and then the context is the current directory. Okay, actually we don't need the context because we are not copying any files from the local directory. We are actually cloning from Git, right? But anyway, the Docker build command still requires us to put the context. So this is now going to run. Notice that that it is installing the CLI, and then it is going to install the the, the Nest CLI. So while this is happening, I'll pause the video, and then I'll return once this is done. Okay, looks like there is a, okay, so welcome back. So looks like there is I made an error in the Docker file. So let's have a look at my Docker file. So it's saying that I'm trying to build, I'm trying to build an Angular project, and the project doesn't exist, right? Okay, so before I do that, let's have see what it did. The let's see what my Docker file did correctly. We install Angular, which is good. And then what it did was install Nest, which is that, okay, that is successful. And then we clone the repository, which is successful as well. Okay, and then after that, when we try to build that, we get an error. So let's have a look at the Docker file. The reason is here. Okay, so I made a mistake here. So this should be neat stack. Okay, so remember this thing cloned into a directory called neat stack. So it should be neat stack and then front end. So the same goes for here. Neat stack, and then here as well, app directory here. Okay, so that should be okay. We change directory into neat stack front end, neat stack back end, and then when we copy, we will copy from the neat stack front end to this directory. Okay, so we'll fix it when there are more errors. So let's try building this again. Okay, looks like this is working now. And I'll pause the video, and we'll run through the trace once this is successfully built. Okay, so the container Docker has finished building the, uh, the image. Let's quickly run through and see what it has done. We started by doing this, and these are the past commands that Docker has run. So we install the CLI, right, and then we clone. So the first thing that Docker did was it changed directory into the front end, and then it performed a build npm I to install back the Angular packages, and then we executed the build command. This thing here. So this is the build, the regular Angular build. So this command produced the distribution directory inside front end. Then what we do is this. We now change directory into the back end, and then we do the same thing again. We install the packages for Nest. Then we perform a build. That is complete. Now we go into the second container. This is the final container where we assemble the application. These are the environment variables. We change directory into our app directory, and then we copy the artifacts over from the first directory from the builder image. Then we run, we reinstall the packages from package.json. And then after that, we just go expose, do the health check, the entry point, and all the other commands. So that's our image. So let's have a look. That's the image. Let's try running this image and see what what happens. So what I'll do is this: I will go to the I'll go to this here and we'll run from here. So Docker images. So I'll go Docker run for -d. Uh, since we are going to access the application, we need to perform a port map, right? We'll say port 3000. Again, I've explained this in a Docker video from season 1, map to port 8080. And we'll run it inside, make sure we run it inside the same network. The network is my net. Okay. And then what we will do is this: we will give this guy a name, this container a name, need let's call this NEATApp. And then we need to define the DB host. Okay, so the so if you don't define DB host, the application will use localhost, which is not. What we want to say is that use this uh, the the database host is this guy, need DB, like that. Okay, so okay, and then finally the image to run is need stack version 2. So let's look at this command again before we run. Go run. We port map from 3000, the external port, to the internal container port, which is 8080. We're going to run it inside this network, my net, which is the same as this guy. And then the name is called NEATApp. The reason why we are running it together inside a network is because if you create your own network, what Docker will provide is the Docker will provide name resolution. So instead of using IP address, you can just say the name of the container which we can use inside our NEATApp application, and this will resolve to the IP address of this guy. So that's the image that we're using. Okay, so let's run this. Keep our fingers crossed, and just run this and see what happens. Okay, so you see that this is starting up. Okay, we can look at the logs. By the way, this container here, this is from the error just now. So let me just kill this container first. Docker rm -f. Oops. So let me just use this container ID. Okay. Right. So after 30 seconds, notice that it is healthy. We can look at the logs for NEATApp. Okay. We can now just try this. Is exposing port 3000. Let me just use this one. Port 3000. So that's our application. We can actually look at we can do a -f to follow. Right. So notice that. So this is actually coming from inside our container application. Okay. We can go into the application. We can go into the container and have a look at what we have built. Go same thing. So let me go to a bigger command. Let me use this command line, which is bigger font. So we got docker exec. We want to we want we want to allocate a terminal and make it interactive, and then the name of the container is called NEATApp, and then we will start a bash shell. Notice this is the app directory in root. Okay, the app directory, and those are the files: the back end, the common, the front end, package node, package log, package JSON, and ts config. All these are copied over from the first container, which is the build container, and then this is the node modules that we install. Okay, we can actually look at the node command. So that is the thing that's actually running. Okay, so that's our those are our two applications. Okay, so let me kill this guy. Let me delete this first. What I will do now is this: I will just create a little make file to build our to build the two images. I'll copy the makefile from season 1. So I'll just copy a few lines from here. Okay. What we'll do is this. The branch we're going to use is branch 28, right? So we are also branch 28. The tag, if you recall, the tag is the is the commit, the short commit number. What was that? For part 28. What was it called? Ref bus. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to attach this to our. We're going to use this as a version number for our image. The reason is when I look at the image using the tag, I can know which of the branch I build the image of. Okay, and then we will do database. So the way we build database is, remember, we are inside the oops, we are inside the deploy directory, right? Okay, make a mistake. Okay, so we're inside deploy directory. So what we need to do is this: we need to change directory. We need to go like dot to the database directory, because the makefile is actually inside the database. The Docker file is inside the database directory. So what we do is this: we go cd dot database, okay, and then we will build this by going docker build, and then we call neatdb, I think, and then I'm going to use the tag, okay, and and use the database directory as the context. If that is successful, I will create a separate tag for this for the image. I'll call this version 1. So after this successful, we will have two we have two images. One image is with this tag, and then this is an alias. So this one is like a link to this. So this is a user-friendly version number. This is the tag built against a certain commit. So when I look at the tag image, I will know which this image is built off which branch. That's the database, and we'll build the application. But I'm just going to say application here. Okay, and we'll do the same thing. Database. You actually, I don't need to change directory because the Docker file is inside here. So I'll just say docker build. This is going to be neat stack tag. Okay, and then if you remember, the Docker file has got argument, a branch argument. So what I'll do is I'll just pass in we'll set the branch argument to branch. Okay, so the first branch, this one is this branch here. Okay, and the second one is this branch. Again, since those two are the same, I don't really need to set. I'm just putting it here so that if you do decide to build a later branch, you can just change this number, without touching the Docker file. That's the first build. Okay, and then I need to put a context, and then finally, I need to tag it. So this is going to be version 2 of the tag, right? Let's create a let's say all, and then I'm going to build all of this. So all will depend on the database and the application. And then finally, I'll just put something here for me. It says build all of this. Okay, so let's have a look. I can just say make. Okay, so it doesn't need to build because it has already built it, but I just want to show you what happens. Notice that the neat stack, that is the that's a short commit tag, and then this is version 2. This is the neat database. That's a short commit tag. Again, by just looking at this one, I know which build, this image is from which commit, and then this is version 1. Okay, I can now push this. Sorry, I can now go docker push. Okay, I can now push this neat db. Okay, anyway, okay, so let's do that first. I'll push that into my repository. Once again, I'll pause the video, and I'll return once it's completed a push. Okay, so I finished pushing the images. So let's have a look at what I did. First of all, I pushed the neat db, and then I pushed the version 1. Okay, these two are actually the same. So we are actually only pushing once, and then the next one I'll push is the neat stack, and then finally the version 2, right? So if we go to Docker Hub, and I'll just refresh that. Oops. You notice that I've got neat stack here. I should have two versions. Okay, so this version 1, which is first season. This is second season, and then I also have the neat db. I should only have one version. Finally, okay, so we have completed that. So now, whenever we want to deploy the application, we will need to first of all deploy the database, create a network, create a volume, and then deploy the database, and then create the application, deploy the application, specify the DB host, and point the DB host environment variable to the database. Okay, so this is a lot of step. Although Docker simplifies a lot of things, but it's still a lot of step to remember. What Docker allows you to do is this. Docker has got this extension, or this a separate tool called Docker Compose, which allows you to describe the entire application in a single YAML file, and then you can just deploy that single YAML file, and what Docker will do is that Docker will bring up the, the application. So what we will do now is we will create this Docker Compose file. Okay, so we'll have a look at how we create a Docker Compose file. Docker Compose example. We'll look at how we do this. So the Docker Compose file is a YAML file, which looks something like this. Make this bigger. Oops. Okay, so it looks something like this. Okay, I'm going to create it in here. With Docker Compose, the default file name is called Docker Compose, and it can either be YML or YAML. So I like to use YML. You can use Docker Compose, not need to run application, but also to build application. Since we've got a make file for building our images, I will not be using Docker Compose to build our images just for running. We need the version for the Docker Compose, so it's version, and then the version is in here is 3.9. And then, if you recall just now, what we did was this: we created a network, and then we created a volume. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. Go networks, and then we're going to say my my vol. It has to be like this, like this. So we have this colon here, right? So it's a key. Now we define this our application, which is called services. Okay, and we will give the names of our two services, or in other words, the name of our two container. So this is the dash dash name option. So the first one I'll call is NEATDB, right? NEATDB, and then the image is v1. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Okay, so that's the image that we're going to use, Docker image. Okay, so the next thing we will need with the thing is, okay, we need to do ports. We need to say what are the ports it's going to expose. So this guy exposing 3306. Okay, and then we're going to run it inside the mynet, and then we're going to mount the volumes to var lib MySQL. That's the first service. The second service, I'm going to call it NEATApp. The image is going to be NEATApp. Okay. Oh, sorry, NEATStack version 2. Okay. So the ports will be 3000. Okay. I'm going to port binding to 8080 internal port. I will run it inside the networks, the same network, put them inside the same network. And then finally, the environment variable, db host is equals to NEAT db. So let's run through this. The two services. I've created a network called mynet volumes. The way we create the application is the service, the network. This is the database. That's the image, and then the port. Run this inside, create a container inside this network, and this is the volume that we'll be mounting. And this is the Nest application. That's the image to use. We specify the port binding to port 3000, run it inside the network, and then we set the environment variable. So that's the Docker Compose file. You can also create build by having the build part, by having this little thing here. Okay, so I won't be doing that because, as I said before, we are using a make file to build. Now to run the application, we just go docker compose, okay, up -d, run it in detached mode, and if everything is successful, we should be able to bring it up. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's go and have a look at the container. So that's the container. This is the database. Notice that, and this is successful, but this is not successful. The neat stack is not successful. So we can have a look at this image. Why is it not successful? It didn't start successfully. So we can say docker logs, right? And the reason is because because we are starting up both the containers at once, right? So in this case, the back end, the web applications actually started up faster than the database. So when it starts up, if you recall, it tries to connect. We try to do a ping to the database in our Nest application. We try to do a ping to the database. If you recall, we try to do a ping to the database, and if the ping is successful, we start the application. Otherwise, we do not start the application. So in this case, there is a timing mismatch, which the Nest application started up, but the database is not ready. So that's why the Nest application failed. What we could actually do is we could actually go back and change the source code, and make it try a few times, right, before it actually failing. in fact, we didn't actually do a retry. We just ping once. If it fails, we will just assume that entire application has failed. So we can go and change the source code. So I will leave that as an exercise for you. What we can do is that in this case, we can actually restart this service by just saying docker compose service. We'll, we'll restart. Sorry, we'll restart the service again. This service is called NEATApp. Actually, it's not called service. Restart. Start NEATApp. This is the name of the name of the service inside the compose file. So NEATApp, right, is this thing. So let's do a restart. Notice that this has restarted. We can look at the logs file by doing docker compose logs -f, and we can see the log. Okay, and then we can now access the application. We don't need to really wait for 30 seconds. Just look at the application. So this is now running off our two containers. Okay, and now you can bring the entire application down by just running a single command, by go docker compose. Okay, again, you must be inside the directory where the compose file is. Let's go down. Okay, and then you bring down the two application. Okay. So with this, I will end this episode. In this episode, I've showed you how to build containers for the database, seed it with some initial data, and then how to build the application. The application database, the NEATApp image is slightly more complex, where we need to have have a have an intermediate container, or to first of all build the application, and then have a final container where we assemble the application, where we assemble the binaries, the build script files from the first container. In this case, the what I call the builder container into the final container. Okay, so in the next episode, what we'll try to do is this: we will try to use these images in Kubernetes to create to use the image and put it into a Kubernetes deployment. Okay, till then, stay safe.